What up, guys? Don't forget, I have my free tools on my website, elliottmarshall.com, both in the jiu-jitsu space and in the personal growth space. So if you're looking for a routine on how to start your day, please head over to elliottmarshall.com, click on free tools, and you will get it there. Also, if you are looking for some mount domination, a short jiu-jitsu instructional, head over, same spot, elliottmarshall.com, click on free tools, and it will be there for you. What's up, guys? This is former UFC fighter Elliott Marshall, and you are listening to The Blueprint. I believe that there's a blueprint of how the most successful people structure their lives. They don't all do it the same. They don't all do the same things. And on this podcast, you're going to hear inspirations, motivations, and stories about how they go through their life. These stories will give you clues and tricks of exactly how you can discover your passion, find your power, and then go give your purpose to the world. Thank you so much for listening. Let's jump into this week's episode. This episode of the podcast is with Allan Draper. Allan is a serial entrepreneur, and what I call a serial entrepreneur is someone who doesn't matter what the business is, he just goes and does it. It's not about his interest. His interest is creating, investing, starting businesses. We talked all about that. We talked about some personal growth journey as always. So without further ado, here we go, Allan Draper. I was just, I'm a little off Instagram these days personally. I'm only doing it like right in the morning and right in the evening. I have a team that's like handling everything else for me, but I'm trying to do a 21-day phone detox. So I have it all off my phone. I have it on an iPad that just stays in my office. So I'm allowed to come down and, look for a second. And I was creeping, and I loved what yours said. Father, entrepreneur. I'm not sure what else it said, but the thing that got me says, I'm a father. Right. And it's like, and I do this every day. I do these like I am statements of like who I am. Mm-hmm. And your title or your whatever you call that, your Instagram headline, really intrigued me. Why does it say that?
I mean, you get to the point in life where you have to choose. And when I was growing up, I always heard people talk about how their most valuable asset was their time. And I always thought it was really cliche and weird. And I'm like, no, man, it's all about money. And then I got to the point where I definitely have more money than I have time. And so because of that, I have to make sure first things come first. And I mean, I need to throw husband up there, but husband's probably number one for me. But I think, and I like how you said that you have those I am statements, because what we put into our minds is way more important than what we put into our bodies. And so there's little things, little practices that I've learned where, and I struggle with it. I struggle with imposter syndrome. I struggle with feeling like I don't belong. Recently I've noticed these thoughts that creep into my head that say that the success that I've achieved has been pure luck. And so, I need to be more deliberate about some things, but I think just kind of unconsciously when we're creating that profile, it was like, hey, what belongs at the top? And, being a father is definitely up there for me.
Yeah, to all of that. I have to say the imposter syndrome, if you don't have imposter syndrome, my personal belief is if you don't have imposter syndrome as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a father, whatever it is you're doing, then you're just kind of an asshole. Like, if you think you've got this figured out, yeah, you're just an asshole. Because I don't know. Like, man, why should you spend an hour talking to me? Why should I spend an hour talking to you from your perspective, right? Like, man, so like that just, I don't know. I think that's part of the gig that comes with leadership is imposter syndrome.
Well, and I think another thing is that it comes from pushing ourselves. So,
right.
Just making ourselves uncomfortable. And I always try to surround myself with people that are going to lift me up. And people that are going to lift me up aren't below me. And they're not engaged in habits that I'm not interested in, them becoming my own. So in a way, that imposter syndrome is a good sign. It's good in terms of giving you a realization of what your status is. It's bad if it limits action. That's where it's bad, where it's like it freezes you or it creates a scenario where you're not motivated. But if it's like, hey, I'm around people that like they're kind of intimidating me. Like I'm rubbing shoulders with really successful people. In that case, it's a good thing.
Yeah. It's where I think the duality always exists though. It's impossible to get away from duality in my opinion. It's amazing and it's great. It's terrible and it's the best thing ever. Like for me, the number one thing is kids. Kids is the worst thing I've ever done to my entire life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, you're like, what have I done?
Yeah. I mean, I believe there's opposition in all things.
Right.
And you know what? It's funny that you mentioned kids because I had kids. I had really young kids when I started my first business. And then I started my business and I'm like, man, it's so similar to having children. And I say this all the time. So people that have heard me before, they've heard this, but I never look at my kids and think, they're all right. It's either they are the cutest, most perfect thing, like, in the world, or I want to choke them right now because they're driving me crazy.
Yes.
And my business, exactly the same.
It's
different. Either like I'm stoked, like everything's going great. And the other thing is I can say whatever I want about my kids and about my businesses. Somebody else does that.
Fuck you.
And we're having some issues. And the funny thing is, man, as a father, as a parent, as a business owner, you got to live in the middle. You do celebrate wins, but you can't let yourself get too low and you can't let yourself get too high. And that's what I've I've been trying to implement, especially this year.
Yeah, it's I really liked how you said it. It's one or the other, right? And specifically with those, I think you add spouse in there, right? It's very rarely just like, this is okay. This is fine.
Exactly.
It's all in those things because you care so much. I think most of it is because we care so much about those three things, specifically. Yep. Shifting gears a little bit to how you made this start. Where did this business ownership, entrepreneurial mind start for you? Tell me a little bit about your life.
It's, I'm actually an attorney. And so I have a lot of, formal education, you could call it. But early in college, during my undergrad years, I started reading about money and business. And
where'd you go to college?
So I did my undergrad at BYU, and then I went to law school at Arizona State.
Okay.
But during the time that I was studying, I was also reading books kind of on the side, and I learned that I wanted to learn what the ultra successful did, and I wanted to learn about their habits. And I did that by reading about them, by studying their lives. And so in the beginning, it wasn't really a book about, the mental perspective or the mental strength of an entrepreneur. I was just reading about entrepreneurs and I caught on that there was something different about them. And I'm a very logical, linear thinker. I like numbers. I like organization. And so when I first started hearing about positive affirmations, meditation, things like that. Like I have this entire practice where I envision not just what my goals are, but me achieving them, what it feels like, what I look like at the moment, what I'm around, what chair I'm seated in, all these things. And in the beginning, I thought it was kind of like really corny and cheesy. And then I realized that, you know, it's what the most successful people did, is they put themselves in the mentality of already having achieved their goals. And then that just set their sights. So there was nothing else to distract. But that started when I was, you know, reading books, catching on just bits and pieces here and there. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People was instrumental for me. And just kind of making that shift in perspective.
I've noticed for me that my second go through on some of these books has been as enlightening, maybe even more so than the first. Yeah. Like I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 20 and trying to be a fighter. I didn't really care. Like I was like, cool. Assets, liabilities, word. You know, but I was just trying to beat someone up. And if I beat enough people up, then I wouldn't have to worry about any of this shit. Right? Like I'll be Conor McGregor before Conor McGregor, and I'll have millions and millions of dollars, and who will care? So, but then I read it again 2 years ago, and I was like, God damn. I was like, man, I wish I would have known this then. I wish I would have paid more attention. So, and now I just got done my second read of Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
And it's and it's talking about this idea that you were just talking about. You imprint these things in your mind. And then when you start to do that, it just becomes true. It's almost like, again, in the duality of the world, a liar who can literally believe their lie is the truth, right? It's because they've said that lie to themselves so many times, and we've all experienced this person, that it's just now true to them. You can't convince them otherwise. So, but if you use that in the positive, you end up very successful.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting that you mentioned that about reading books. And what's changed, I mean, that just reemphasizes everything that we're saying right now. Because what changed from the first read of Rich Dad Poor Dad to the second was the words didn't change. The words of that book did not change, right? That book was written, 30 years ago or something, and maybe more. And what changed perspective? I took this philosophy class, and I actually ended up getting a minor in philosophy. And one of our assignments was to, as we're walking across campus, to notice something that we hadn't noticed before. And I thought that was really weird. I'm like, how the heck am I going to notice something that I haven't noticed before? But I was like looking around. I was changing my perspective. And I noticed this day that this incredible freaking tree, dude. Like I had never seen it before. I had walked by that tree, Elliot. I walked by that tree no less than 400 times. And this time, I'm like, dude, that tree, it almost looks like it has a face of a person in the middle, and it's huge. It had to be 15 feet in circumference. This incredible tree. And then we did the assignment, and he was asking people what they saw. And I tell you what, every single time I walked past that tree, I noticed it from there on out. And when we change our perspective, that's what happens. You talk to somebody that is negative, that doesn't have perspective, that's not necessarily successful in one area of their life or another, and they're going to say, I can't make money, I can't fix my relationships, I can't do this, I can't do that. It's just like me walking by that tree 400 times. It's not that they can't do it. It's that they don't see it. Their perspective's not right. But once that shifts, then everything changes. And it's like every time, like I see business opportunities, I have probably 10 plus a day where it's like, before I never saw, now I see them everywhere. With my children, I have 10 plus experiences a day where I have an opportunity to teach them or tell them how much I love them or, share a special bond with them because I'm looking for it. And that, having that perspective, and your example of the book is exactly that. And if you read it again in the next couple of years, it's going to be a new book for you again.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I mean, Think and Grow Rich did it for me too, because Think and Grow Rich, for example, is all about, by the end of this book, you'll hear the secret of how they've all done this. And I can remember reading it the first time, be like, dude, you didn't tell me shit. Like, this was okay. And now this time reading it, I was like, man, how did I miss this? Like, how did I miss this secret? It's screaming at me, and I had figured it out in between my two reads, from something else. But I was like, how did I not get it the first time? Which is also was very interesting for me. Like, what the fuck, Elliot? But it's the only way that I think now. Like, I understand what that book is saying. Did you have an aha moment like that where you were just like, oh, damn, okay, I get it. To switch your perspective, right? Like, because everything is about the perspective. I can't, or I can. Okay? And if you believe the I can piece, what's that saying? If you think you can, if you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, it's like whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
You're right, yeah. When did that click for you?
I think it came in, in progression. It came in small moments over time. I don't know that there was a moment where it was a light switch scenario for me. A lot of it came through my confidence. I started noticing that when I was confident about something, I got better at it. And it's true that as human beings, we tend to like to do things that we're good at. But when I was studying for the bar exam, my wife was really sick. She had just delivered our first. She developed heart disease. Actually, it was really bad, and I was teaching myself secure transactions, commercial paper, a lot of things that I needed to know for the bar exam, and just wasn't in a good spot to take it because I was in and out of the hospital. I remember studying, in the hospital room for weeks.
And you had a newborn.
And we had like a week-old baby.
Yeah.
And I passed it the first time. And I think that was pivotal for me because I realized, when I kind of put myself in that mental stage, that mental perspective of, hey, I burned my boats, right? Like I just got a whole bunch of debt with law school. Like now I have a newborn, my wife is sick, hospital bills, all of this stuff. And I'm like, I have to do this. And somehow I did. That moment was like, okay, if I have the right focus and perspective on something, I can figure it out.
Yeah. And then you just take that confidence. One of my favorite lines is, I believe in a lot of performance enhancing drugs. Why does this keep happening? Sorry. I believe in a lot of performance enhancing drugs, and I believe confidence is the absolute best one. I'll take that over all of the fucking steroids, all of the everything, because if you are not confident and on steroids, you're fucked. But if you are confident, it will beat literally everything.
100%.
So, and then the best thing about the confidence is you can just take it, right? And then it's like compound interest, right? It's literally compound interest where you just boom, 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 boom. And it just keeps, it grows like the stock market, like your money in an investment account. So for me, that's the best part of the confidence.
Yeah. And confidence is, I think that's a great point. And I agree with you. I think you have to have confidence in the right thing. And a lot of that has to be in, I can adapt, I can overcome, I can, face failures and learn. It's not, I am going to succeed 100% of the time, right? I mean, when you something, that's what's in your mind, but when you don't, because you will fail. If you're not failing, you're not trying. And then you're like, this is what I signed up for. This is what I was built for. That's the confidence that I'm trying to instill in my kids. I try not to say too much. I have a son that's really good at baseball, and I try not to say too much about how good he is at baseball. I like to say things about how hard he tries, how he faces obstacles, overcomes really tough pitching or whatever it is, because those are the things that will take him throughout his life. I'm not necessarily the best baseball player in the world, but man, it's gonna be tough for you to outwork me. It's gonna be tough for you to have a better mentality about the game, better love for the game, and because those things during a defeat, a failure, a strikeout, whatever it is, that doesn't change. Whether you're the hardest worker, that doesn't change when you fail or lose. And those things apply to all areas of our life.
How old are your kids?
So my oldest is 10. I have 10 8-year-old boys and then a 4-year-old daughter.
All right. I have 2 kids that are really good at basketball, so different sport. And I have 13 and 9. And I'm struggling with my 9-year-old because he might be the best 9-10-year-old basketball player in the state, and he knows it. And he knows it. So, and my 13-year-old, he's very good too, but he's definitely not the best. So he works his ass off. And it's not that my 9-year-old doesn't work hard. He definitely works hard. But I'm in this stage with him a little bit where like we had to have like a family sit down the other day about work ethic. And even just around the house, because I believe it starts, I believe in how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you don't want to do the dishes, I get it. You don't want to do the dishes. And I don't want to do the dishes either. But that ability to just suck it up and do the dishes will translate to basketball. Because at some point, dude, all of the trash, and this is what I said to him, I was like, all of the trash players, there's 50% of kids playing basketball at 10-year-olds are just terrible still, right? And which is fine, no problem. But at 11, there's less of them. At 12, there's less. At 13, right? It keeps going until no one's terrible. So at some point, my dude, they're gonna have the same ability as you, and the only thing that's gonna separate is whether or not you'll be able to outwork them to keep your advantage. So
yeah, 100%.
It's a struggle with kids, man.
Yeah, I take drive over talent any day of the week.
Of course. With my 9-year-old, he does have the drive and the confidence. Like, so it's an interesting mix. Like kids, I wish there's no rule book, right? There's no playbook where you're like, well, the kid's going to do this and then you do that,
Yeah.
I can remember the first good game he ever had. He dropped 25 in a game. Yeah, exactly. This is what I'm saying. He drops 25 in a game. And I look at him, and we're driving to practice the next day or a couple days later, and, they have a game in a couple days. And I'm like, and I fuck up here. I shouldn't have done this. I was like preparing him to not play as well because of like my own failures in the past. And I'm like, well, dude, you might not play as well this game as you did last game, which I shouldn't have done, right? This was a mistake. And he looks at me and goes, why? And I was like, man, fuck you. But I was very proud of him. I was very proud of him. I was like, oh, hell yeah. And he's like, let's make a bet, Dad. And I'm like, okay, what's the bet? He goes, if I score more this game than last game, I get 2 ice creams instead of 1. And I was like, okay. We're 3 minutes into the game. He hits a 3-pointer for his 7th point now. And he turns around and Michael Jordan's me. He puts his hands up in the air like this and goes, told you. And he dropped 34 points
Jeez.
And the second half, he had a broken cheekbone. And he played. He just cried and played.
Holy cow.
So, yeah, he
That's
like,
serious.
he's got drive. Like, the only thing I have to work at with, not the only thing, but this idea, and I'm trying to do exactly what you just said with my kid. I'm like, oh man, that was really good effort. I really liked how you included your teammates. Yeah, like, I know you're going to score 30, dude. I got it.
Yeah. I mean, and I think there's this other aspect, at least with my children, and I think with kids and even adults is, and I talked about it before, and that's living in the middle, not letting yourself get too high or too low. And with one of my kids, especially, that getting too low, and all the greatest athletes have had their failures. You know, Steph Curry talks about this a lot, where he'll miss 5, 6, 7 shots in a row to start a game. But the mentality is the next time he shoots, it's like his first shot. Whether
You're 0 for 0.
Exactly. Whether he's made 5 in a row or he's missed 5 in a row. It's like you don't let yourself get too high and you don't let yourself get too low.
And I think a lot of that comes from, I don't know, I personally like to tell my athletes and my kids when they're doing sports, what's the next smallest thing you can do right? You know, because a lot of times in fighting, for example, and business, right? You get behind the 8 ball in some way. It starts, you know, whatever starts going downhill, and you're like, yo, I got to win the round, or I got to make money this month. Like, I lost money last month, I got to make money this month. Well, man, those are big tasks. Those aren't small tasks, you know. And if you focus on that, it can be overwhelming in the brain, you know. Where the small little steps of, okay, put my hand by my face. Okay, pick up the phone and make a phone call. You know, whatever that small thing may be, are what's going to get me to winning the round, per se, or getting out of the red.
Yeah, 100%.
What are your actual businesses, Allan?
Oh, man. Well, I own right around 30 different companies. Some of them are sister companies, but I own businesses in the home service industry. We talked about a pest control company that I own. That's in 9 states. I own a product company that was just on Shark Tank a couple weeks ago, actually. I own a digital marketing agency called Lizard SEM. I'm developing a software called Rana Hub. Own
So
a
you're
content
full
marketing
entrepreneur.
company. Yeah, like, and I'm getting, and those are like active roles. And then I have a passive portfolio, so I'm an angel investor. So I'm really big into real estate too. Own a bunch of commercial, short-term, long-term rentals. Do quite a few things.
Yeah, so I am not full entrepreneur. What I like to call full entrepreneur. I guess sometimes the word bothers me because people say everyone, it's cool right now, right? Like 30 years ago, you were a loser if you were an entrepreneur, right? Like you were like, oh, you don't want to work. Is what it used to mean, right? And now it's like this cool thing, you know. Gary Vee made it cool, and I like Gary Vee, but he made it cool to be an entrepreneur. But like, man, opening one business is not an entrepreneur. You're just a business owner to me. Like, you just do your thing and you're a business owner. Cool. Nothing wrong with it. Again, absolutely nothing wrong with it. I wish you all the best. But you're not an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur, I'm not even one, because all of my businesses are in this personal development type stage or area, martial arts and helping martial arts companies, and then this podcast. So they all surround this. But a pest control and software, well, Jesus, man, they're all over the goddamn place. So that to me is entrepreneur. You like, yo, let's do that.
Yeah, honestly, I think an entrepreneur is like it's kind of like somebody that likes basketball. It's like a personality. Now, I think that there is some action required, but the idea of an entrepreneur is like, hey, I have an idea. I'm going to take a lot of risk, and I'm going to build something that wouldn't exist without me. I think that's an entrepreneur. And and it can be, there's various stages. And I think you're right about a business owner, especially if they just created for themselves a job. And if that's what they want to do, perfectly fine. That's just not, I have incredible risk tolerance. Just the other day I got pitched this new app that's going to compete with Venmo. And I got in the pre-seed round. So it's launching any week now. It's called Swift, SWYF. You should check it out, SWYF.app. But it's basically Venmo with rewards. And I got to the point in the analysis of this company where I was like, okay, and I invested $200,000, and I said, this is either going to go to zero real quick. That's the worst case scenario. Best case scenario is this is going to turn into 30 million. And the more likely scenario is going to be somewhere in between.
In the middle.
And those are the deals that I love. It's like, hey, there's a chance, there's a fighter's chance at there being like a home run here. But not everyone's built like that, but entrepreneurs usually, they're like, what the real risk is, man? The real risk is working a 9 to 5 that I hate for 30 years. That's the risk. That's how entrepreneurs view the world. That's how I view the world. Now, I'll do anything I have to put food on the table for my
sure.
family, for my kids.
And look, those people are needed, right? Like those people are needed. I don't ever want to come off like they're not needed, because look, I depend on people that just work. You depend on people that just work, right? Like, and I totally get it. It's just not for me.
It's just like going back to my basketball scenario. It's somebody that says I like basketball versus somebody that says I like baseball. Mm-hmm. It's like one is not necessarily better than the other. And there's a lot of people that would look at me and they're like, I do not want your life. I will, my mom, go 9 to 5. As soon as she clocked out, that second hand hit 5 o'clock, she was gone. It was over. I never stopped thinking about my businesses. It doesn't matter what vacation I'm on. It doesn't matter who I'm with. Mm-hmm. And there's some people that don't want that. So it's more of a preference thing. But in terms of being an entrepreneur, you're right. It has become this thing where it's like everybody should be an entrepreneur and everybody can be an entrepreneur. And I don't agree with either of those statements.
No, don't do this. It's not that glamorous. Like they think it is.
Exactly.
Right? Because everyone sees Gary V, right? You see Gary V, or you see Mark Cuban, right? And you're like, man, these guys living the life, sitting first round. Gary V's gonna buy the Jets. Mark Cuban owns the Mavericks, and he sits courtside and rubs shoulders with LeBron. Yeah. And you're just like, yo, no, man, it is just not that. It's what you just said.
Yeah.
You're on vacation, sitting on a beach. Your wife looks over at you and goes, what are you thinking about? And you have to lie, right? Like you got to be like, I'm thinking about you and the kids, baby, you probably don't lie. Neither do I, but it's always on your mind. There is no such thing as a vacation.
Yeah. And and I wouldn't have it any other way, man. Like the struggle, I have 17 business partners, and I spend probably 20 hours a week resolving issues with business partners or creating new partnerships. It's a big part of my life is working with partners, and it is hard, man. It is the hardest aspect of my businesses.
Well, because they have people attached to them.
All sorts of stuff, different expectations. Like, there's, different trajectories for the companies, and just a lot of things that come into play. And there are a few people in terms of percentage that would be willing to do what I do. There's few. There's less than probably 2 or 3% of the population would put up with it. And I think the reason why is because I don't have to. Financially, I don't have to. I never have to work again in my life. So I could say, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm going to go hang out on the beach. That's not the life I want, man.
people ask me, I agree with you. People ask all the time, when are you going to stop? And I'm like, I don't know.
When am I going to stop breathing, man?
Yeah, I love this. There's nothing that you do. I'm assuming there's nothing that you're going to do today that's going to bring $1 in today. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting way to think about it. I don't do any day-to-day aspects of any of my companies.
Right.
So if I stayed in bed all day today, I would probably make the exact same
money. Right. You detach your dollar from your hour is what I like to say. Right. Exactly. The only place I'm willing to do it for me personally is like, I'm trying to get into the speaking, because I really love it. Just mostly because I really love it. But like, for example, lawyers, you're a lawyer. If you did law stuff, then all you do is attach your dollar to your hour, billable hour. Mm-hmm. And then you're just working all the time, because the next thing you know, you're making $400 an hour. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to turn down $400 an hour. Like when you look at that in your mind. Mm-hmm. So go work more, right? And I that one, it just doesn't make sense to me. I can't grasp it.
Yeah, it's, and I think, another business that I own is I'm a named partner in a law firm. But I don't practice law. Mm-hmm. But I always say that in order to get to the point where you're paid for more than you do, you have to do more than you're paid. Or whatever, some variation of that. And there are some people that are not willing to do that. They're like, you know what, just pay me my hourly wage, just pay me, and there's people that are very wealthy employees.
Very wealthy.
And so it's not about that. Your capacity is obviously unlimited when you own a business and you leverage your time, but that's just kind of the path that I decided to take.
I personally don't like being told what to do either. To be super honest, I hate it. I can't stand it. I can't. When somebody tells me that I have to do this, I'm like, man, no, I don't. And
well,
it just turns
right.
me.
You don't.
Yeah, it just turns me off.
Yeah.
It turns me off immediately. Even when it's it doesn't matter who it is, my mom, my dad, like I don't care. And I look, for my mom and my dad, if they say have to, I probably do it because they're my mom and my dad.
Yeah.
But that's about the end of Elliot. You have to do this.
Yeah.
Because, like, even if I was gonna do it and somebody then says I have to do it, I am probably now not going to do it.
Yep. No,
I can't. It doesn't compute in my head, man. I just can't. I'm like, I don't. It's a really weird thing, and it can be like that. I can be on my way to doing it, Allan. And then
you're like,
you
I'm
have
not
to
going to do it just because you told me I have to.
Yeah. Now you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't go well with your spouse, right?
Oh yeah.
So
sure.
Sometimes, look, like this life is hard for a husband-wife relationship. It can be very hard because, like you said, you're very risk avert. You're very risk tolerant. You can handle a lot of risk. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with your wife sometimes? Because it's not like she doesn't get a say, right? She's your wife, man. Like they get a say in everything, like whether we like it or not. When you're like, yo, I'm going to invest $200,000.
Yeah. And I did. I asked her what she thought, and we were on a date night over the weekend and waiting for our reservation, and we were talking about it, and she brought up some really good points and questions that she wanted me to ask the founders, and I did, and came back with some decent responses. But she's not super involved. But if she were, then I would, change my strategy. And I do run some stuff by her, but she couldn't list the companies that we own, and everything that I own, she owns half of.
Got it.
So it's just personality. But I remember, one day I came home from, I was working for a law firm in Phoenix, and I came home and I said, hey, I think we're going to start this pest control company. We're going to move to Detroit. We had 2 small children, 2 under the age of 2. And she's like, let's do it. And so she does have some risk tolerance there. But I think more than anything is that she believes in me. So with that type of thing, she doesn't have to worry about it. And that to me is everything. When she said that, like, there's a lot of people that have been like, we are not moving to Detroit. You are not quitting your law job. You are not becoming a bug guy. And she was just all in.
It's interesting. My wife came, I'm assuming you went to BYU, you're Mormon. Yes.
Yes.
My wife grew up Mormon as well. Big family, finances rough, stuff like that. So, go to work and make money was a thing for her,
Yep.
So she could not understand why I wasn't going to teach more private lessons, right? Because I could charge $200 an hour for jiu-jitsu private lessons. She's like, Elliot, just get 5 and you make $1,000 a day. And I'm like, yeah, I know, babe, but I'm capped at that. Like, I'm capped at $1,000 a day.
Exactly.
And she's like, yeah, but that's $350 a year. I was like, yeah, but I'm not going to do them every day. Let's just say you do it 4 days. She goes, yeah, but it's still $200 a year, And to me, that just didn't sound like enough. Like, look, it's plenty. Hold on, let me go back. It's plenty. 200 grand a year is plenty of money to live on. But I don't want a ceiling. Like, I don't want a ceiling on what it is that I can achieve. So teaching more private lessons wasn't a thing in my mind that I could get around. But changing her mind on that was a difficult thing because we were pretty broke at the time, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't a lawyer. If you're a lawyer already making good money, it's one thing. I was like, just starting this business, just buying into this business with my business partner, making $4 grand a month is where I started, And it's like, yo, shit, like you got to get to work. And she's like, teach more lessons.
Yeah. And I think and early on you do what you got to do, but I took a 95% pay cut when I started my company. But the reason why is, first of all, it wasn't about money in the beginning. It never was. It was, my biggest kind of goal or what I was after was I wanted to be able to control my time.
Yeah.
So so I put more time in for a few years, but then, on the back end, save 20.
Yeah. You can do whatever you want today, right?
Yeah.
So look, a couple questions as we close up here, man. I'm trying to change this, and we've been talking a lot about businesses and how you invested and obviously you want an ROI on that, definitely. But I am trying to change this talk on ROI, with your time, for example, with people's time, because a lot of times we look at it as like, oh, what will that bring me? So I ask it in this question, and not to like toot my horn or anything like that, but this podcast probably won't bring you anything. Like, I don't know how many really rich founders I have that are trying to start a business that will want you to invest in. I'm not Tim Ferriss, so there will not be 100,000 million downloads of this episode. So why are you sitting here with some dude that you never met before, who had a little bit of recording issue on the front end because he wasn't signed into his Riverside account? Why put up with it, and why waste your time for an hour?
Well, there's a couple of things. Like there is something that I get out of this. So I have 2 podcasts of my own that I release weekly episodes of. And so I get it, and I've been doing them for years. I have hundreds and hundreds of episodes. And for me, the reason why, I'm interested in going on others' podcasts is, one, I feel like I have something to say. I feel like I can add value to people, and I can help them see around the corner where I wasn't able to when I started. 2, I like building connections. I like increasing my network, and I like being able to offer something to somebody in terms of, hey, dude, if you ever need to reach out to me, you've got my number. And then 3, I'm creating content right now. So I don't know who this is, who's going to see this from your audience, but then I have control of it on my end. So I'm going to make sure that this, gets out and get some visibility, so that I'll find some more of those angel investment deals.
Awesome. Yeah. I just like to hear people's reasons, of why they do what they do. Because I feel like the why you do what you do is as important, if not more, than what it is you do.
Exactly.
Because that is what keeps you going when the motivation's gone, when you're tired, when when that opportunity comes up, but it does look like work in the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. That you're like, yo, man, this is going to be work. So if your why is big enough, you can handle it.
Exactly.
Last question is, I believe everyone has a unique gift and power, however you want to look at it, that God gave you, that the universe gave you, that whatever it is. And I believe that when you harness it, you yourself become infinitely powerful in a way that is just amazing. What you can give to the world and then what the world can then give back. You went away. Hello?
Did you lose me?
I did. I lost your picture. Interesting.
Am I still gone? I'm not.
Yeah, I see no picture.
Weird. I'm seeing
maybe. Yeah, you can see me.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what happens with the recording then, because it says it should upload anyway.
Okay.
So anyway, something that you go give to the world, and then the world then just gives back to you so much. What do you think your power is?
I actually posted this on my social media the other day. I have an incredible knack for treating things or believing in things that I cannot yet see. So I will work towards something for years without seeing the tangible benefits, and that affects my faith in God. That affects my relationships with my family. That affects my businesses. That affects like my physical body. I mean, I go to the gym every day, and it took years for me to see like some really solid progress. And because I can delay the short term and I can focus on what in my mind I've created as a vision as to what's going to happen, I'll work for years towards something where a lot of people would just give up.
Yeah, that's a great power, bro. That to me is the best power almost, because damn, half of it is just sticking in the game long enough.
Exactly.
You know, half of it is sticking in the game long enough. I have this great athlete who can be a world champion. She has the ability to be a world champion in jiu-jitsu. And I don't know why this thought came in my head the other day, but you know, there was 10 people when she was a white belt that were giving her problems, right? Mm-hmm. Even in Colorado, in our area. And then at blue belt, it was 7 people. 7 of those people were still around competing. You know, maybe 8, because it's not a big step from white to blue, but there's this big step at the purple belt level in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know, the level of competition goes way up. So it went down to like 3 or 4 of those girls, you know, and now it's none of them. Like none of the other girls that were coming up with her in the same state with the same goal had the ability to stick it through, because you still aren't that good. Like at purple belt, you're good, right? You're good at jiu-jitsu, but you're not really good. You still like make silly mistakes and fuck up. So it makes you lose, and people just can't hang. They can't hang for the long haul that it takes to be a world champion. And that ability is the number one thing, right? The number one thing, because no one's born good at anything.
Yeah. Yeah, so, exactly.
Allan, I appreciate you coming on, man. Tell everyone where they can reach out, website, social media, all that stuff.
Yeah. So my website, allandraper.com, great place to reach out. I do 15-minute chats with people just to see how I can help their businesses, see if there's a good fit there. And then I'm really active on Instagram, Allan R. Draper. And then my podcast, the Business Growth Pod. Check me out there.
Cool. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. Love the discussion.
Thanks. Yeah, guys, as always, don't go out in the world and try to be Allan. Allan has his unique gift, his power that he gives to the world. Don't go out in the world and try to be me. I got my thing that I do. Go out in the world, everybody, and find your own power. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found something useful that you can take and implement into your life. Don't forget to head over to wherever you are listening to this podcast and leave a review. That would be greatly appreciated. Also, go follow me on social media at FireMarshal205 on Instagram. Leave a comment, anything that you would like there. And as always, if you think this would be useful for somebody else that you know for their life, send it their way. That would be greatly appreciated. That's it for this episode, guys. I hope you all have a great day and you go step into that power so that you can give your purpose to the world.